we use a phrase almost, and we see and we meet a phrase on every place we turn, which is so vital and so fundamental. And I don't think that we have an insight into such a vital phrase. I think it's so that the superficiality here is the cause of the major problems of our times and all times. The question is, what is Yirאת Shamayim, Yirאת Hashem? Yirאת Hashem, how do you say it in English? Fear of Hashem. Now, the word fear is a dirty word because it's unhealthy. You'll speak to any psychologist. Any psychiatrist will tell you fear. It's debilitating. A person who lives with fear, a person who constantly walks around fear, afraid, I mean, it can cause all kinds of distortion. And here, all our svarim, all our books, all our are filled Yirאת Shamayim, and the tzaddikim had Yirאת Shamayim, and that one was Yirאת Shamayim, this one was afraid to do this, and that one was afraid to do that. How are we to understand in a wholesome sense, in the true sense, what is this thing that we call Yirאת Shamayim? What is this thing that we call Yirאת Shamayim? I'll tell you something. There's enough here in this question. I'll tell you something. If you understand this, you have what to live with for 2,000 years. Let's first talk about ordinary biological fear. What is ordinary fear? Extreme fear. Fear of physical harm. Do you ever see a cat that's frightened? A cartoon? Constricted. It arches its back. You ever see that? See a picture, a cartoon of a cat that's afraid. Fear in its most physical and its most physical manifestations of fear is the threat to my existence in any measure. Well, I'm afraid it hurts my finger, or I'm afraid it hurts my hand, or I'm afraid my whole body will be hurt, or my whole existence will be hurt. That's the nature of fear. Physical fear. Yirאת Shamayim. Now, let's take a few steps further along the road of physical fear. If somebody points a gun at somebody, points a gun. What is the nature, what is the analysis, what is the psychological analysis of what happens to a person if a person points a gun at somebody? What is the rock bottom? What is there at the bottom? There is a feeling that my whole existence, my whole life, whatever I am, my whole existence is totally dependent on the person who's holding the gun. My being or my non-being is totally dependent on the person that at this moment is pointing the gun at me. And that causes a tremendous fear. Since in front of my eyes in 1 second I see that my whole life, all my dreams, all my aspirations, everything I possess is dependent on the finger that's on the trigger of that gun. Right? Now we can deeply understand what Yirאת Shamayim is. Yirאת Shamayim is an understanding that my existence is not an unrelated entity, not that I'm totally unrelated, but that my existence is related to a certain source, a certain life-giving source. I'm not totally autonomous. I'm not the total master of my destiny that I can say that my existence, that I will myself into being, or I can unwill myself out of being. Yirאת Shamayim is the recognition that every person is correlated to a source of life. In the deepest sense, Yirאת Shamayim means a consciousness that a person has roots, that a person is correlated to a source. Subsequently, if I have this awareness that I'm not the absolute total master of my being, and that my being has a root, and that root is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that my existence is totally b'ritzonoi, this has to create a consciousness of Yirאת Shamayim. The opposite of Yirאת Shamayim, you see, we say the whole tragedy, the whole distortion of the word, of the concept of Yirאת Shamayim is that people take it down into a fear. You know, they tell you, qualms of conscience, fear, unwholesome, unhealthy fear. This distorts the whole subject, the whole area of Yirאת Shamayim. The wholesome, the fragrant aroma through Yirאת Shamayim is a total understanding of the stature and the origin of the person. When a person can relate himself and say that I am a Tzelem Elikim, which means that I have a relationship with Elikus, this has to evoke a natural awe in oneself. And to the extent that a person has this awareness, to the extent that a person's da'at is elevated through limud HaTorah and avodah, to the extent that his da'at is picked up out of petty little desires, and how do they say today, ego trips? To that extent, the person correlates himself to his source, and he stands more in awe to this Tzelem Elikim that he possesses. That's Yirאת Shamayim. That is the true meaning of Yirאת Shamayim. And that's why in that Mishnah that you asked the question from, which speaks of Altiyu Mishamshim L'Sarav Al Manas L'Kabel Prat, Altiyu Mishamshim L'Sarav Shaloi Al Manas L'Kabel Prat, because you shouldn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with ulterior motives, with motives of receiving reward. This fits in like a hand in a glove. Because when one understands his true stature, your own true worth, the opposite of Yirאת Shamayim is a embeddedness in darkness, in not seeing man in his true perspective. Man becomes a bundle of impulses and instinctual desires. That's what man dwindles into, and his life becomes dedicated to the pursuit of nonsensical little things. The whole stature of man, his whole Tzelem Elikim, becomes earthbound, and he has no fears, and he becomes, till Professor Skinner in Harvard University tells you that man is just like a mouse in a maze in the laboratory, and you train mice, so you can train man. That's the opposite of Yirאת Shamayim. Yirאת Shamayim, again, Yirאת Shamayim means to make an analysis of what fear is. Just like in physical fear, but in physical terms we use the word fear, a threat to my existence. In Yirאת Shamayim you have to use the word awe, an understanding that my existence is truly tenuous. You know, the old preachers used to say, in Jewish, they used to say that when people think of death, because especially young people, they think that there's an organization someplace. That if you belong to that organization, you die. But if you don't belong to that organization, you live forever and ever. And we live the deceptive and the delusive mechanisms that work in man in order that there should be b'chira. Man, we don't think, we live for 1 million years. But man is a tenuous animal. In the Gvura Sh'mayim Shana, Yirאת Shamayim, true Yirאת Shamayim, the word Yirאת Shamayim, it has been so battered and so downgraded and so misused and so abused that we think Yirאת Shamayim is something, what they call today frummy, Yirאת Shamayim means understanding the total implications of that man is correlated to a source, and the deeper you understand that correlation, that there's a Borei Olam, there's a Rebbeinu Shel Olam, and I have a Tzelem Elikim, and the deeper and the wider the person understands his Tzelem Elikim that is related to that source, the greater, the deeper, and the more subtle the Yirאת Shamayim. And it all stems, you should know, I'll tell you a klal, a rule, you should know a yesod, a foundation in everything. There is nothing in the physical world, nothing from the smallest grain of sand to the Himalayan mountains, from the tiniest little microscopic cell or a virus that you can't even see, to the greatest mammoth animal that does not have something corresponding in Ruchni. The whole physical world has its parallel in Ruchni. If there's the emotion of fear in the physical world, then there is that identical parallel. There's mugbal, there's an emotion, there is something in Kedusha that has to do with fear. Just like, again I reiterate, just like physical fear is in its most essential, in its most basic, what do you fear? A threat to my existence. Whether it's a threat to the existence of my pinky when I'm playing around with an electric saw, or if somebody points a gun at me and a total threat to my existence. That physical, that purely biological feeling has its parallel in Ruchnius, which out of lack of knowing English too well, I can only think of the word of awe. Yirאת Shamayim is awe. Knowing that my whole existence is correlated to a shoresh. That's Yirאת Shamayim. A little clearer? Yes.
First of all, it seems when you say that man has his existence is related to a higher being, why does it have to be expression? Why do you say it sounded?
Very good. Very, very good. 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 Now we have to go into a little bit semantics. If you notice, I chose, in speaking about an awareness of to where he is related, I chose the word awe in contradistinction to the word fear. Now, there's a point that we have to bring out one step further. There is a phrase in Tehillim, I believe, which says, Gilu Bira'oda. Gilu Bira'oda, which means Gilu, glee. The words must be related, etymologically. Be gleeful Bira'oda in your trembling. Can you think of a greater contradiction? It's a contradiction in terms. Gilu Bira'oda. Can you think of a greater? It's an antinomy. It's a logical contradiction. Be gleeful, be excited with joy, Bira'oda in trembling. This is the answer to your question. I specifically said in the beginning of my talk that the whole concept of fear of Hashem Yisborach is distorted. It's taken from, it's a direct extension of physical fear, which is sickening, which is debilitating. When a person is fear, you know what the end of the road of fear is? I'll use a prevalent term, is paranoia. The end of physical fear is paranoia. Today, everybody says, yes, sometimes I'm afraid to do something, today you're paranoid. You know, today everybody is. But anyway, here we have in Tanakh a concept which is such a gem, which, who knows of it? Gilu Bira'odah, the Navi says, David HaMelech says, Gilu Bira'odah, you should be gleeful, overflowing with joy, Bira'odah, in trembling. What is it? Let me explain. Let me explain. One of the greatest tragedies in life is, one of the greatest tragedies in life. I remember once reading a poem, I don't think, maybe about Wordsworth, maybe wrote it. There's a line in a poem about seeing, witnessing in life unfulfilled talent. Seeing a person with a talent, with a unique talent, and the talent in no way does it come to its proper address, to its proper fulfillment. This is a tragedy. Someone who can play violin like Yasha Heifetz, compose music like Beethoven, like Sibelius, someone nearer to us. And instead of composing music like Sibelius, what does he do? He's a garbage man. For one who appreciates music, this is the height of tragedy. What is the opposite of this? A man who recognizes his talent and who dedicates all his forces with a tremendous amount of seriousness, with a tremendous amount of authentic carrying responsibility to bring his talents to fruition. Like we'll say, we'll take Toscanini. He was so, if you read his biography, he treated his music with such seriousness. So the world had, the world of music had this greatness, right? Now, glee and trembling is the following. The trembling is the understanding of the relationship. What am I? What am I? What am I? In properly understanding what I am, what I truly am, immediately there follows a joy. I am in proper place. All my count. That is fear with glee. That's Gilu Bira'odah. Gilu Bira'odah. You see, this is precisely your question, what I was trying to get rid of. This is precisely what I was trying to get rid of. Sick fear is debilitating. Nothing creative can come out of it. But all can only a person who really knows himself, and the deeper a person knows himself, the greater he understands what he is, what his talents are, what his responsibilities are. And with this understanding, there should become a natural koyach of fear of choice, what to do. This creates the greatest joy in life. That all the tzaddikim, all what we speak about, what can I do? We live in a world of distortions, even in Jewish life. You say Yirאת Shamayim, you go to a girl talk Yirאת Shamayim. So Yirאת Shamayim means to her, I don't want to make fun out of anything. I don't want to be facetious. I mean, what Yirאת Shamayim has dwindled to what it has dwindled, to what it has been distorted. But through Yirאת Shamayim, as we spoke, is true understanding of one's total existence. I mean, total means above and beyond. And this should create this phrase. I could never, in all my born days, if I lived 3,000 years, I couldn't imagine such a phrase, because Gilu Bira'odah. Gilu Bira'odah. Gilul Birada means dance for glee as you are trembling. Only Ruach HaKodesh can say such a phrase. Because this is the truth. Because when a person reaches himself, you see, I only spoke of one talent. But when a person knows the total talents of every individual, you see, we are callous. Our whole existence is a callous. We are so desensitized. We don't even know it. We don't even know the stature. Everything that a human being has. So many talents. To say good morning is correlated with Yirah Shamayim in the Gemara. The Gemara discusses, I mentioned so many times, there's a whole Gemara in Brachas that discusses the virtues of saying good morning to a neighbor, and what happens if one says good morning and the other person doesn't answer him properly. You see, we live with a fraction, with a minimal, almost imperceptible fraction of our existence. Everything is Yirah Shamayim. If you understand true Yirah Shamayim, it makes everything you do. It's not an obsessive compulsion for perfection. There's such a thing, obsessive compulsive, which means he does things like a machine. But when a person begins to understand his true stature, then whatever he does is involved with Yirah Shamayim. How I speak to my neighbor, how I treat myself, how I treat my home, how I treat my possessions. Everything is Elikut. And that's Gilul Birada. That's all of understanding the dimensions of man. That understanding has to create normally and in the most wholesome self joy, glee. All our depressions, I mean, if we get at the bottom of them, it comes from a sterility. All depressions come from a sterility of some sort, a vacuum of some sort. It's not possible in the world for a person to be truly creative, working on all his cylinders and being depressed. I knew the Panad Ajarav, he just died 2 years ago. Yeah. He was in his 80s. He had one kidney. Physically, he was shot. His wife, his daughters, his sons were all killed. He had one son left. Each son, one was bigger than the other. His son-in-laws, one was bigger than the other. His wife was Rabbi Zukamir's daughter. I mean, she was a princess. He had, in Ponevezh, he was the king of whole Lithuania and half of Poland. He was the king. He came, the first time I saw him, he came and he spoke, it was like someone speaking out of a grave. It was like someone speaking out of a grave. And a friend of mine told me that when he opened the Ponevezh Yeshiva in Hetzro, if you ever have seen it, I don't know if you have seen it, it's on the top of a mountain. It's not a mountain, a big hill. He said they had a shack with a tin roof, with tin walls. That's where the yeshiva was. And he announced to everyone that whoever learns from yeshiva, this Shabbos must be in yeshiva because there's going to be a kiddush after the davening. After the davening, he opened up a diagram, a picture of this present building. And he said, on this mountain, we're going to build this building. So the boys start to nudge each other that he's, from the war, something happened to him, It was a literal, the first time I was there was 1952, it was still desert. Part of it was, the building was up. It was still desert. It was desert. A broken man that's saturated to the marrow of his bones with tragedy. To the marrow of his bones. It's not only that he lost his family. He was the only rabbi from Lithuania that escaped alive. And he felt, and this is haunting, it always haunted when he spoke, he said, I'm the only rabbi from hundreds in Lithuania that escaped alive. So, and this, what happened to this man? He built one building. He built a city. This old broken man, he built, when you go to Hetzro and you come to Bnei Brak and punch on the mountain, it's not one building, there's maybe 20, 30 buildings. He had an awareness of life, and when you saw him, a smile. Every cell is flowing into one corner. The Panavajarav sees. And everybody got a line, to give him Shalom Aleichem. And everybody, his humility, a smile, a broken man. He could have gone into the convalescent home, and say, look, I had it, throw the towel in. But what am I telling you? It was purely a result of this awareness. It was purely a result of an awareness of what he is and what he has to do. And he constantly did it. This is Yirah Shamayim. This is Yirah Shamayim. It starts purely from understanding biological fears. Biological fear is a threat to my existence. I get a feeling that my existence is someplace outside of me. Someone else can nullify my existence. That's the point of a gun, that you get that feeling. In Ruchnius, Yirah Shamayim is an understanding that my existence is outside of me, but to know where it's correlated to. And once you know that unleashes forces in a person that gives him an entirely different stature. If a person knows, if a person feels, if a person has the Havana that we talk, you're reading the books, everything today is translated into English, everybody reads English, nobody bothers to study Hebrew. Spark, there's a spark in a person, spark, and this is read it in English. What are we talking about? Once a person understands where outside I'm related to, somebody would come right now and show you, that you are, show you a letter, all of a sudden, that you're Rabban Kotler's niece. That you're the Chofetz Chaim's niece. In purely a physical sense, it gives you a different... If a person comes to this awareness that where he's related to himself, outside of himself, this has to create awe. You want to say something? Yeah? They're not opposite ends of the It's just a question of ABC, Aleph Beis. The minimal yira, this that they call yira ha'einish, the fear of punishment. So the words you have to understand. There's yira ha'roimimus and there's yira ha'einish. I spoke about the end of the alphabet, about Tov. About the end of the alphabet. But they're both correlated. The beginning of the... What does it mean, the fear of punishment? You can get a rap on your hand. No, that's not it. Yira ha'einish means, since I'm correlated there, subsequently, every act of mine gains significance. Every act of mine gains significance. Yirah ha'einish means it should, in a wholesome sense, imbue a person with a feeling of success and failure. Instead of saying a mitzvah and avera, which today is an archaic term in most corners of the world, you go on Brooklyn College campus and tell somebody he's doing an avera. They'll laugh in your face if they know what the word means. It's an archaic term. Even good and evil is something which modern society doesn't. Evil has been put on the throne. You have whole movements to deify evil, that evil is something wonderful. That out of evil, good is going to come. But Yirah ha'einish actually means, since I'm correlated since a person, I have an awareness that I have a tell and I'm related to that, so subsequently my actions, I have to think in terms of success and failure. A person has to think of that. You cannot get away from it. As liberated as we want to be, you cannot get away from it. To be a person is a responsibility. If you go and you insult a person because you're mean, I don't mean you. You have to know you failed. You have to know that you failed. Otherwise, you can't. The psychologists will tell you don't have any conscience, don't have any fears, don't have any ambitions. This is giving us what we have here today. A person has to know that there's success and failure in life. And this understanding, if I know what I am, I know what success and failure is. If I'm a Ben Melech, if I'm a Bas Melachim, I have different concepts of success and failure. If I take something in my mouth without making a bracha, it's a failure. Because a Ben Melech should have Hakoras Toivah. A Bas Melachim should feel that Hashem Yisborach is giving me this. I don't deserve it because Harayel is and Holeisha, they don't have it. I have failed. If I eat a delicious, sumptuous meal and I rattle off the benching without any feeling, it's a degree of failure. If it depresses you, it's your hard luck. And this is the whole gamut. This is the beginning from our till top of the whole concept of year.